bring up my phone just to make. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Sorry that we were a few minutes late. Sometimes technology is always a challenge. I hope everybody is doing okay.
It always is a challenge, isn't it? Are you
There
still
we are.
picking me up okay?
Yeah, I'm picking you up fine, and I was just checking to make
Okay.
sure I could see the comments in the Facebook group. So we're
Oh,
good.
good. Wonderful. Well, it has been a month since we started our stitch along, and a lot of you I know got this last month's stitching assignment done, which is right here, which is wonderful. Sorry if I sound funny. I'm getting a little bit of feedback in my own headphones. So
Oh,
bear
yeah,
with me if
I'm
I
not hearing it. I'm not hearing it from here, so
good.
you're good for the moment.
It's just me giving me a little bit of an echo. So if you hear me kind of stall a little as I'm talking, it's because of that echo. There
Okay.
we go.
I have rearranged the screen so that your stitching is the primary focus.
Okay. I'm going to take my hoop out for a minute so that we get a better look at last month's stitching assignment. So as we've talked about before, the stitching assignments are about 78 stitches wide by about 58 stitches high, and they run vertical or run horizontal then across the page. So the first 3 months are over the top of the page, the second 3 months. And again, we are doing this over 15 months. So if you haven't had a chance to really look at the stitching assignment or just kind of started where you want, no problem. No problem at all, because this is set up in a grid and you can go however you want to go. Let's see here. Uh, okay, I'm going to take out my earpods, and see if I can get rid of this echo I'm getting, because it's really annoying. Hold on. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, there we go. All right, so now I'm not picking up the echo. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go without my headphones because I can still hear you guys fine. And sorry, I hit my camera, so it was jiggling a little. Anyway, it is almost the 4th of July here in the United States. I know we have, I think we had somebody from the Netherlands saying they were going to try and join today. And I know we had somebody from Australia say they were going to try and join today. So it is not your independence celebration, but it is ours here in the United States. And we're very excited about that. Everybody but the dogs and the cats and the animals love all the fireworks. How about at your end, Cathe?
Yeah, pretty much the same. Yeah, our town actually still does our town still actually does a parade. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
It's too hot here to do a parade. For those that don't know, I live in southern Arizona, which is in the middle of the desert. I'm in the southwestern portion of the United States. For those that may not be aware of exactly where Arizona is in the US, and it is hot. Our high today is 113 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm staying indoors. I know you have a
Sounds
lot
like
better
a
weather
good
where you're at,
plan.
Cathe.
Well, it was like 105 out in the valley on yesterday, and it cooled off by 20 degrees today because the fog back.
Wow. Well, yesterday morning, no, not yesterday, Saturday morning, when I went into work, I was at work by 9:15, and the 10-day forecast, so a week from today, was supposed to be 122. I was so glad that changed, because then by about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they had adjusted that forecast. so that it was going to be only 117. And by the evening and by today, the forecast again is like 113. So yes, hot, miserable, yucky, but not 122, which kills people. So we're really grateful that we may miss that this year. We've had that a couple of times in the last 30 years that we've had that 120 plus degree days hit, and they're no bueno, no good at all. Yeah, so
No,
I'm
that
glad the
doesn't seem
weather's
like
cooler for
it
you.
doesn't seem like that would be a fun thing. No.
No, not a lot. Not a lot. So last month's stitching assignment was really fun because there were so many different colors that you got to use. Were you able to stitch on it at all?
Was there a favorite part you had for that one?
I loved the mystery. I loved the mystery piece here. I think it is like half of a pansy or half of a flower that you're looking at from the side. There was discussion on the group. Somebody thought it was a bug. Somebody thought it was a turtle. I also see a horse saddle. My daughter rides horses, so I thought, hey, it looks a little like a horse saddle.
Oh, well, yeah, you do kind of get that sort of curvy part in there.
Yeah, you do. Just a
I
little
hadn't thought
bit
of
there.
that. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
if you went around horses
I
a
just
lot,
always assumed it was a part of a flower, and that
I assume it's
the
part of a
motif
flower.
was too big to fit in the space.
That was kind of my thing, that she started a flower and couldn't do the top because it was going to be too large for the piece. So, yeah. So that was one of my favorite pieces. The border is really fun to stitch. It's very simple and repetitive, which is nice. That makes it very pleasant. I'm stitching on 56 count for those that don't know. And so this little over one bird, he was no joke.
Did you end up doing it in 10 stitch, or were you able to get the Swasserfine to work?
I'm using the Swasserfine. That's what I'm stitching my whole piece in. So I did 10th stitch in here in the body. The legs are full cross. So if I had more than 2 stitches side by side, then I did it in 10th stitch. And that helped a lot. That
Well,
makes
and
a
from
big difference.
and certainly even from this distance of your phone camera to the top of the stitching, it actually it's hard to tell that it's over that it's a 10th stitch. It looks like it's complete, coverage.
Yeah, it does. It looks a lot like it's all the same, but it isn't. It is 10th stitch and full cross. So this month's stitching assignment is basically, let's see here, get this into the screen. There we go. Is basically from here. So basically, I completed the bird. Like I said, it went to about 78. So this is where the stitching assignment for last month ended. I didn't do this part of this motif. It is okay to kind of pick and choose what it is you're going to stitch when a motif carries over into the next month. And so as opposed to starting that little bit in the corner, I've saved this whole motif for this month. I did the whole bird. I noticed that some people did down and stitched this large bird here. And that's totally okay also. However you want to do it. There are no stitching police. I know some people have switched up some of the colors, like the blue that you find in the border, because they didn't think it showed up enough. That's okay. This is your little stitching world. So I think that's great.
Yeah,
I
I
am
think even when
was
you're stitching on a reproduction sampler, I think you have to decide why you're stitching it. You know, if you're stitching it to,
exactly
as a model stitcher, that's one thing. But if you're stitching it for your own
right.
personal enjoyment, then I think you should feel free to play with it because then you make it your own. Then it
I
has a
agree.
different life.
I agree completely. Um, some people will take out the names of the person that had stitched the original and put in their names. That's okay too. One of the stitch alongs that I did, I had one of our stitchers really change the motifs. She did the border the way it called for, did some of the house, but she didn't love some of the birds that were in it. So she just left them off and then added her initials and her kids'
Oh, I like
initials
that.
and did that. It was great. And it still was considered being finished because that particular stitch along when you completed it, then we had a drawing for an antique sampler. That we're not doing this time, but things change from stitch along to stitch along. So, have you had a chance to work on it at all, Cathe? I know
No,
you've been
I'm hoping
super busy.
I'm hoping to get her started maybe sometime in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, we've just
I
been
don't
so
know with
busy
all that you have
with
going
other
on.
things.
I don't understand.
Who knows? It
It's a
might happen
mystery to
tomorrow.
me.
It might be my Independence Day stitching. Who knows?
There you go. There you go. I was going to I pulled this out yesterday and I'm so glad I did. I usually just pull it out just before I get ready to do one of the live shows to make sure everything is set up. Well, I pulled it out yesterday. I thought I'm going to go ahead and get my needle threaded and get things ready to go for today. And I pulled out my pattern out of my stitching bag and I pulled out my fabric and my hoop and my floss wasn't there. And I went,
Oh
oh my gosh,
no.
where is my floss? And then I remembered I had taken it to work with me on Saturday and had pulled it out to show somebody. I did not, however, remember taking out the floss, but I evidently took the floss out of the bag, set it on the table. And when I loaded everything back up, the floss didn't make it. Because, like I said, I didn't ever remember even taking the floss out of the bag.
So did you have to go
So
back to the shop to pick it up?
So I did. I drove back into town today. I live an hour from the shop. I drove back into town today
Oh
and
geez.
went to the shop, and there it was, just sitting there on the table, slick as could be, just waiting for me. Um, it was just, I was so relieved because I didn't know for sure that it was there, but I didn't know where else it could be. And I thought, what am I going to do? I don't want to buy all this floss again because you never
Well,
know sometimes.
better than having one of the pets eat it.
Yes, I have had my dogs. Um, we have a lab pitty mix, and she is about 6 years old, and she loves to chew on hard plastic things. So I have learned that I cannot leave my spools down when she is around, um,
Oh, okay.
because she will sneak one because it's nice hard plastic and she will chew on it. And she's very happy doing so. I had a spool of floss one time that I would roll off however much I could get in one round before
Yeah.
the areas where she chewed through the floss.
Oh my gosh.
And I get these little short pieces, but I had to have the
So
color, and I
Susan said that
oh
she
sure,
tried a full cross stitch on the bird and then she's stitching on 40 count. So I'm assuming
okay,
she tried it with the Susan, did you try it with a SWA 103? Because I think doing it as tent stitch with SWA 103 on 40 count for the over one stuff would work fine.
Oh, it'd be
The
beautiful.
Swasserfine would work for overwin if you do a full cross, but just
Yes.
for doing a 10 stitch, I think it would be the 103 will give you a nice look.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry, I just realized my face looks a little dark because I'm a little bit backlit, but I couldn't avoid the backlighting. I have a drapery and a blind, but I still have some sun coming through. So sorry about that. Next time I'll try to remember to hang something between the curtain and the blind so that it's a little bit darker. Because I'm not really trying to hide from anybody. No, do the stitch along. Just don't let them see you.
So are there any
Oh.
specialty stitches in this month's section?
Just some, there is some over one. So right here, there is going to be some more over one because it comes across right about here. And so there will be some over
Oh,
one
okay.
stitching up in here. But again, it's not a lot. It's each is in single rows. And so you should be able to do it as full cross as opposed to doing a half stitch or a tent stitch. Um, and the advantage to doing the full cross on these letters is, again, then you don't get parts on the ends that look like it's just hanging there, which can happen because if you look real close right here, you see where it's every other space. Every other
I did
space
like
right
the
here.
suggestion one person made. I don't remember who it was, who said that when they do a tent stitch for a motif like this, where the thread's a little too thick to do over one on all of it, that they do a full cross stitch only on the corners. And then
Yes,
they do a
I
10
have
stitch
done
every
that.
place else so that you get that visual cue that this is the end.
Yes, I have done that before, and that helps. That works really well, actually. I especially do that on, like I said, like on the bird where I did his leg in full cross and the rest of him in tent stitch. Um, I'm just trying to get my pattern set where I can see it so I can see what I'm stitching as well as showing you what I'm stitching. But yeah, there's all kinds of tips and tricks, and when we get closer to let's see, I think it'll be November is, I think December is when, wait, let me think. June, July, August, September, October, November. Okay, I think November is where we begin the Algerian islet. And
Oh,
so
okay.
in October, then I will do a how to do Algerian islets as a continual piece, which kind of makes it go a little faster and helps your Algerian islets look a little bit neater. Um, and that works really well. And so I will not show you how to do that on 56 count. I will get some 28 or 32 count fabric where it's easy to see what I'm doing and where my hand is and where the stitches are going. And I'll show you how to do a continual Algerian eyelet. And that works well. So do any of our uh, ladies that have joined us, are any of you have any fun plans for tomorrow for the 4th? Or are you going to use it to stay home and stitch?
Both sound like a good thing.
Yeah, I'm good either way. I'm actually really good with staying home and stitching because it's too hot to go outside here.
Well, and given how bad the weather's been in so much of the US, I suspect that's probably the case for a lot of parts of the country.
I think you're right. I think
Whether
you're
you're
right.
whether you're dealing with the smoke from the fires in Canada or you're
Oh,
in
that is
Canada
just
dealing with the smoke.
awful. That just breaks my heart, all of that mess. I we have dealt with such awful wildfires here in Arizona, and I know you have in California. And so it just, anybody that has to deal with that, it just makes me so sad, um, to see our beautiful forests and trees and things being destroyed because of these fires, because it gets so dry. I'm hoping that this year, because of all the rain that we had, that we won't have a particularly bad fire season. That would be a blessing. That'd be a blessing for you guys too,
Oh
because you
yeah.
guys have had some awful
Well,
years with wildfires.
we had good rain this winter, and because we have not had a really hot early summer, there's
Good.
still a lot of snow up in the Sierras. Usually,
That's
most of it
just
would have melted
crazy,
by
isn't
now.
it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were skiing last weekend. People were going skiing this weekend.
Oh
They
my
said it was a
gosh.
bit. They said it was because of the way the weather was. It was a bit like skiing on a slushy because
I bet.
it gets it gets cold enough to refreeze, but then it's kind of icy, so it's not
Right. So
super
it's more
smooth.
like skiing on a ice skating rink.
Yeah, but so they said that we have not had we, last year I think fire season started in like May. This year it hasn't really started.
Right.
We've been really fortunate, and part of that's just because we had a lot of rain and the snow melt is still making its way down, so it's kind of keeping things a bit more hydrated. So
Right. Well, and that's kind of the same way we had here. We had a really quite mild June for us, because in the past, when we've hit those 122 days, 120 plus days, they have come at the end of June before our monsoon sets in for the summer. And we just did, we were in the low hundreds. Well, the beginning of June, we were still in the 90s. That, and for us, that is just miraculous. That's just
yeah,
miraculous. And so,
so
yeah.
several people are planning on stitching tomorrow.
Oh, good.
um Cathe Shannon's actually going to a rodeo tomorrow in Portland.
Oh, that would be so fun. That's one of the things that I miss about being up in the White Mountain area, where our family's cabin is, and being able to be there, is that they have all the fun small town things because it's cooler and they can. They do a parade and they have rodeos and things like that. And it's just too hot. It's just not safe to do that here.
And Wendy, who lives in Australia, is traveling from Melbourne to Auckland to visit her grandchildren.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. My grandson lives with me. I have two grandsons. I have my 5-year-old grandson who lives here, with my daughter, um, in our house. So I get to spend a lot of time with him. And then I have a 10-year-old grandson who is up in Washington. And as last time I was up there, I didn't get to see him because he was, um, at his mom's. He's actually my step grandson, but he was at his mom's instead of at my daughter and son-in-law's house. And so that made me a little sad that I didn't get to see him, because I love Leo to death. He is just, so grandkids are the best. They're so
So
much better than
Deborah,
our own kids.
so Deborah wanted to know whether or not Nicola had suggested an alternative blue for the light blue in Soie d'Alger as opposed to the 103. I can look and see if I can find a color similar to the substitution she suggested from the 103 to the Soie d'Alger, and then post that when
For
I'm
which
back in the
color,
shop.
Cathe?
For that, this was for the blue.
Oh, okay. That people are, yes, because for some it's felt a little light.
Yeah, so Nicola
For
had
me, I
done some
like it.
suggestions for it. So
Okay.
um someone just wanted to know if she had made the suggestion um, for Soie d'Alger. So I'll use those colors to try to map it back to something similar in Soie
Oh,
d'Alger and
thank
then
you.
post it.
Thank you. Otherwise, I can do the same thing, but it'll be Saturday before I can do that because that's when I'll be at the
Yeah, I
attic
can do it
again.
when I'm back in the shop on Wednesday.
Oh,
So
good. Okay. Yeah, because you guys are closed on Mondays,
yeah,
right?
usually Mondays we do shipping and paperwork, but I gave my staff today as well as tomorrow off so that they got a long weekend. So
Oh, that was lovely.
I went in for a little while to do some paperwork and then went, you know what? I think I'm done now.
Yeah. You said okay. That's good. Yeah, I went when I went into the shop, I wasn't expecting anybody to be there, but our merchandiser Beth was there. And so that was fun to see because I never get to see her. Um, sorry, I keep missing my whole. There we go. Um, I never get to see her very
Oh yeah, because
often.
she's usually only in on Mondays,
She's
isn't
just
she?
there on
Hmm.
Mondays, yes. And I'm the Saturday girl. So, yes, absolutely. Um, One thing I want to just remind you of, all of our lovely stitchers, is that if you need something, it is perfectly fine to message me and ask me questions. But if there's something you need to order the extra floss, if you're wanting the Swasserfine to do the over one, or something like that. Anything that has to do with actually ordering, you need to contact one of our supporting shops, as opposed to trying to go through me. And it's not that I'm not happy to help. I am happy to help in any way.
It's
But
just one
again,
extra step.
it's an extra step, and I don't handle the mailing for any of the shops. So I am, even for the attic, I'm the Saturday girl. I just there on Saturdays, and we don't do any shipping on Saturdays because we're so busy with customers. And so contact your shop. If you have questions about what the floss is, absolutely message me. Ask away. Um, but if it is specific to an order, then you need to go directly to the shop and ask them. It'll be less frustrating for you, just because it's eliminating me as the
Yeah, just
middleman.
send
Where
an email to whichever one of us is either closest or you bought supplies from or you regularly
yes,
deal with or whatever.
whoever
And
your
we'll
shop is,
all of us, any of us will be happy to take care of it.
yeah. So if you've worked with a stitch in time or traditional stitches or acorn and threads or needle in a haystack or the attic, I think I got you all right.
Yep.
I think that was all. I did it. It's only taken me several years of these stitch alongs to remember all of the names. But all right, so now I'm switching out my thread. I don't usually pre-thread my needles. I usually am a stitch with one needle only. And but I thought for this it would simplify things if I kind of pre-threaded a couple of needles, uh, for this. So that's the reason I already had a needle loaded with my red floss. And just before
Well,
we
that's
went
always a
on,
good thing.
yeah, and just before we went on air, I was my cat jumped into my lap, and by doing so knocked my little tray over that I keep my floss in, and my floss went flying everywhere, and I found 3 of the 4 colors that I had in the tray, and now I don't know where my gold went. So I'll keep looking
Maybe it
for
rolled
him.
under the chair.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to move the chair completely, and
I did that
I've
not long
looked under
ago.
the
Only,
bed.
and I had my shoes under the couch, And I went, I cannot figure out where they are. And I discovered one of my spools had actually jumped into my shoe.
Oh, well, yeah, because two of the spools landed in my lap. One of them landed on the floor, and I have the mystery gold that I have no idea where it landed. Um, I've got to go through my stitching bag because it is close to it was close by, so I've got to go through it again because it's here somewhere.
It's there
but
somewhere.
but they're little and they're good hiders.
And they do have a mind of their own.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So, ladies, and if I've got any gentlemen, because I know we've got many in the stitch along, but if we have any gentlemen joining us today, what has been your favorite motif so far to stitch, or a favorite color? What have you liked?
And remind me which color fabric you're stitching yours on?
I'm stitching on Bee's Knees by Seraphim.
Oh, okay. So a little more goldy.
It is it's actually a little mellower than Sand Dune.
Okay.
Vintage Sand Dune is a little golder. This is just a hair mellower. So
So a bit more
very,
honey colored.
yes, little more honey colored. Exactly. Than Vintage Sand Dune is. Um, but I love the color. Um, One of the colors that we were recommending for 56 count was Weeks Cocoa because it has a nice mellow and looks really pretty with the reds and the greens and the golds. Um, but I just, as soon as I saw this pattern, I thought, oh, I want to stitch that on Bee's Knees. So I actually pulled from my stash for my fabric as opposed to having the shop supply it for me.
Well, and I also think that, that's the other part that's the fun thing of doing, whether it's a reproduction sampler or any other kind of stitching, is in the part of making it your own is finding a fabric that speaks to you.
Right. Well, I was working on um I was in the mood to start something new because running two stitch alongs and trying to finish up my other stuff just doesn't have enough new stuff going for me. And I am a serial starter. And so I pulled out a pattern that I'd been wanting to start. And I started it and I did one of the flowers in the gold that I had done the conversion myself. And it was actually a very accurate conversion to the DMC that it called for. But when I put it on the color of fabric that I'm stitching on, the gold went very brassy and flat.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't like it at all. So I went and chose a little brighter yellowy gold so that it's prettier. So it is totally okay to switch up colors so that they look best on the fabric that you're working on.
Well, and the other
Um,
thing I think we all have to remember too is that for most of these samplers, this was not a somebody set in stone, a teacher or anybody else didn't really set in stone what the colors were supposed to be. I mean,
right,
granted they had an idea, but it wasn't like it wasn't to the level of where we're trying to, well, does that match that? It was more like, well, we got this really pretty gold, let's use that. So I think
right.
we need to feel being a bit more freeform about it.
I agree. Well, and you have to realize these little girls, they stitched with what they had.
Yeah.
Sometimes everything would be all silk, sometimes it was all cotton. Sometimes they'd have a little bit of precious silk in a color that they liked, and they would use it. And then everything else was cotton. You will find that on samplers also. The antique sampler that I have is um, it was stitched in wool, but I am working on charting it very slow. I say that, I guess not accurate. I worked on charting it for a while, It's been
Uh-huh.
put away for a while. So I can't say that I'm actively working on charting it. But I have pulled the colors and matched the colors to the sampler, and I'm going to stitch it in silks
Yeah,
because
Elizabeth Coulter, the mate to Sarah Rinder, she was stitched in wool.
okay.
And I think that was pretty common for a lot of samplers, and particularly a lot of regions, because in many cases it would have probably been easier for them to get wool than it might have been to have
Exactly.
gotten silk.
Exactly. There were
And if you
parts.
were working on a looser weave fabric, that would also give you better coverage on it too.
Yep, because wool was thicker, so you'd get better coverage with a wool than you would with a silk. Wool was frequently more readily available than cottons were,
Particularly in England, yeah.
particularly in England. Here in the United States, cotton was much more available. And so you find, I think, um, you're more likely to find things stitched here in the United States that were stitched with cottons
Oh,
and
okay.
wools, but less of the silks because we're not a
Yeah, that
silk
kind of makes
producing
sense.
country.
Yeah. So Robin said her favorite color is 621, that it really pops on she's working on vintage sand dune as well.
Oh,
And also she
awesome.
likes 107. I think 107 is one of the reds. And
Okay.
Aura wants to know how you've wrapped the extra fabric in your hand from that you're holding in the left side of your hand from your
Oh,
hoop.
I'll show you.
So are you just rolling it up?
Are you? Yep, there it is, out flat, and I scrunch it up.
Oh, okay.
I just scrunch it up. I am not kind to my fabric when I am stitching with it. That is a really good question. Some people roll them and use the silicone cable ties with the magnets to
Mm-hmm.
hold them in place. I can't do that because I work on such a small hoop that if I was to have anything clip over the side, like you would see where my thumb is, look
Oh,
how
it'd be
much
in the
space
way.
that takes up.
Yeah.
Exactly. I work on a 3.5 inch hoop. And so I just let my fabric hang. But again, because I work on 56 count fabric, I don't have big, huge pieces. My biggest piece usually that I'm working on is a piece that's 17 by 18 inches, a stitcher's eighth. And
Yeah, I was
that
going to say
is
that's probably
not
the
real
most common size
cumbersome.
for a lot of samplers. Yeah.
Yeah. So in 56 count, that's actually a pretty good size sampler that needs a full stitcher's eighth of 56 count. But I have, before I converted to stitching on the higher counts, when I first started stitching, and I was stitching on 36 count and 40 count, and so the pieces were bigger that I stitched on, I would get the jawed hair clips, the hair clips with the jaws, the ones that I'm going to hold my hand up here, the ones that kind
Oh,
of
the ones
fold
that
in
are
like
feel like
this.
yeah.
Yes, that looks like the claws, but ones that had a flat edge on the side because it's not as hard on your fabric. And I would roll my fabric up and use that clip to
Oh,
hold
okay.
my fabric in place.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe what we'll do is do a post and ask people to post pictures of how they deal with the excess fabric, particularly if they're working
right.
in a hoop or in hand or Q snaps and not in a scroll frame where the whole thing is sort of taken care of.
Yeah. So the
And then
clips,
people can kind of post their different methods for handling
yes,
that for different
we
counts.
will we will do that. I think that's a great idea. Because that is really good tips. So great question. Thank you for asking. Um, excuse me while I count here.
So do you usually work a color at a time?
I try to work a color. Well, I try to work like a motif at a time because this little area is so small. I don't want to stitch and then tie it off and put it away and pull out another color to stitch the green. So if I feel like I can safely count it to the next little motif, then I will work with as much of a color as I can. So that's what I'm doing at the moment is just, I don't want to keep stopping and starting this red. So I'm going to try and use up as much of this strand that I pulled off of my spool as I can.
Yeah, I'll carry the thread as long as I can't see it from the front.
Exactly. In fact, I will show you on the back how far I'm carrying. As you can see
that's
here.
not very far.
No, and especially on 56 count. Now that might show if you were on a looser weave, but 56 count is such a tight weave that it's not an issue.
Well, and another tip for people too is
show through.
Is that if you're carrying threads, if you carry them on the diagonal, you're less likely to see them than if you're carrying them either horizontally or vertically.
True.
Horizontally or vertically, they end up running into the ditch of one of the threads in the weave, and it's usually much more noticeable. But if you carry it diagonally, it's less likely to happen. So I will sometimes go up a stitch, take a tack, so that when I carry, it's on a diagonal and on a straight line.
That's a good idea. I have also been known to, if I'm carrying further than I want, because I don't want things to catch the thread that I carry on the back. I don't want to run that risk because I don't want to end up distorting my fabric. And so I will also run under stitches and bury it through some stitches to carry it over if I feel like I'm carrying further than is safe for how long that carried piece is. So I'll carry 3, 4, 5 stitches on 56 count. It's a little more than I would probably carry without burying the thread if I was on a lower count fabric. Because again, those stitches are bigger, so they're further apart. So 4 stitches on a 40 count is a big change from 4 stitches on a 56 count. So
and it also depends too on the density of the fabric.
Yes, it does.
Meaning 40 count Newcastle is more opaque than 40 count Witchold.
Yes.
Because the base threads are plumper.
Yes. Much more opaque. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Whoops.
And Susan said she stitches in hand with a hoop as well. She also rolls up the excess fabric and she secures it with magnet ties and Wonder clips. Yeah, I use Wonder clips usually on bigger pieces, particularly on my needlepoint pieces, because I make sort of pseudo scroll frames for my needlepoint pieces where I don't really want them attached to anything. So I'll roll them like an actual scroll and then clip the ends. So yeah, I think we'll do a post about having people post photographs of how they do various things, because that might give some other people suggestions for what to do if they're having excess fabric to deal with.
I think that's a great idea. I think we'll definitely have to do that. Let's see.
So do you ever work with more than one needle at a time?
No.
Too hard to keep track of?
It's too hard to keep track of it. I have on rare occasions kept a thread intact without stopping it and bringing it up further out so it's out of my way. But even then, it still ends up getting in my way. So I work with one needle. I am not a two-handed stitcher. So I get a lot of time to stitch, and I'll even have more time to stitch than I've had because my grandson starts kindergarten this year. Which will be really, really fun and sad and all of the feels about him starting school. But I'm not. People talk about how fast a stitcher I am. I'm not a particularly fast stitcher. I just have usually a little more time than a lot of people. I would be a much faster stitcher if I maybe worked with more than one needle or spent time, or worked in some sort of frame where I could do two-handed. But I have found,
I've tried two-handed. I'm just not ambidextrous enough to. I can do it on needlepoint because I'm working at the dentist. I'm working at 24 count, usually 18. But doing
right,
two-handed on 46, my ability to get into the right spot from the back
right,
just isn't
exactly.
there.
Okay, I just realized. I think yeah, I did. I stitched that in the wrong spot. I always make a mistake when I am. Yeah, I did. All right, I'm going to
Is
pull
it the
this out
first
while we're
one? Is
talking.
it the first one or the
Yep,
second one?
it's this one. I didn't um I didn't go over. I went up. I instead of my single stitch being here, I made this a row. It should have been the top of my
Ah,
little
got it. Okay.
design,
Okay.
and I made it the side of my little design. And one nice thing about using Swasserfine is that it is easier to take out than Tudor silks because of how tightly twisted it is. I can usually back out a little ways to fix things. So I'm hoping that I don't have to cut off my thread.
And I also want to point out to people that when you're pulling this thread to get it out, you're not pulling it straight up. You're pulling it almost in the same plane as the fabric. So instead of pulling
Right.
up like this, you're pulling like this. If you do that, you're less likely to get it tangled up, and you're
Right.
also more likely to get it out.
Yes. So I pull it out. I get it. I start it by pulling up and then I pull off to the side.
Yeah.
So we'll
It also
see.
tends to cause less stress on the fabric too.
Yep. Exactly. Now I've got a little piece of fuzz or something that I picked up from somewhere. Not that that ever happens with me. Now, mind you, I have 4 cats and 2 dogs. So pet hair is a fact of my life. Um, it's a little less of an issue with me sitting in the chair now than when I stitched on my bed all the time. Because when I stitched on the bed, there was plenty of room for the cats to get up there and they would lay on my things. But now I've got a little table and
And
I'm able to
this is the
protect
new
things
chair,
better.
right?
This is the new chair. This is my adult chair. Yes. This is my
I like that.
this is my I am an adult. I can have a chair. Um, of which I have been most grateful for. It has been wonderful. My cats still come up and get in my lap, but there isn't room for me to stitch and have them in my lap. So they get up there. I put my stitching down. I love up on the kitties.
And then eventually they figure out, okay, I'm done now.
Yes, and
She's
then they
gonna
get
work on
down.
stuff. Oh, that's
Exactly. Then
good.
they get down and they're like, okay, I've had my loves, but they don't want to stay up in my lap too long. They're cats.
Yeah.
They're cats. They don't want to
And your
stay.
existence is just to serve them. So
Exactly. They've had their pets, they've had their
Claire
loves.
Claire said thank you for making a mistake for us.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, honey, let me tell you, Claire, mistakes are something that I do. Unfortunately, I try not to reverse stitch if I can finagle it, but unfortunately, with a motif like this in this border, it's important that it's all laid out properly.
Well, and it is a lot easier to make mistakes when you're doing what we're doing now with you having a conversation at the same
Oh,
time you're
I make them all the
stitching.
time while I'm trying to
Yeah.
have a conversation.
Yeah,
I'm
I've
the
done that so
queen.
many times where I'm having a conversation with somebody and I look at it and go, wait a second, that wasn't even the right color.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Now we'll pull that out. There we go. See, and I managed to save my floss. And Tudor probably would not have survived
No,
that. I would
no.
had to have, I would have, if I'd been stitching with Tudor, I would have cut it off, pulled out that little bit, re-anchored, and started over.
Yeah, Swasserfine and SWA 100 both, because they're twisted so tightly, and you can do machine embroidery with both of them,
Yes.
means that you can actually get them out and keep them intact. And that's not usually the case with stranded silk.
Right. Right. And so I really like working with the Swasserfine. I like working. I don't work with 103 much because for my liking on 56 count, it's too thick. Now I had a chance to talk to Nicola because she loves stitching with 103 on 56 count, but she likes her stitches to be raised and to stand out, where
Yeah.
I like my stitches to flatten into the fabric a little more and look soft. It looks a little softer almost. I had a chance to see somebody's uh, customer had stitched the same thing I had stitched, and I had done mine with Swasserfine, and she had done hers with 103. So the colors weren't exact, but they were still very close. But the difference in how it looked was really interesting because hers looked more intense in color than mine did.
Oh, yeah. Well, that would make sense because you've compacted it so much closer together.
Right.
Yeah. Natalia said she's stitching on 11 count. She says, "Here I am stitching on 11 count like a baby." Natalia,
Oh,
if
no, no, no,
that's
no,
what
no, no, no.
it's like, if that's what it takes for you to stitch it, then stitch on it. Even if you stitch on 7 count. Yes, there is a 7 count. Actually, there's a 6 count. It's called Herta. But I think you should stitch on whatever it is that makes you happy and that you can see and that you can work with. I think the
Absolutely.
important part is to keep stitching, keep that connection between your brain and a needle and thread and a pattern and all of those things. I think
That
it
is
helps.
so much
I
more
think it,
important.
I think it helps with our emotional well-being. It helps with our mental well-being. So if
Yes.
that's, if it works for you, go for it.
Yeah. Don't, did I do not say, oh, look at me. I stitch on 56 count. I stitch on 56 count because it's good for my brain for me to have that challenge. So that's the
Yeah.
reason that I do it. It isn't so that I can go, hey, looky here, look what I'm doing. Not at all. It's because for me, I it's good for my brain. And that's what you have to do. If you can't see to stitch on a higher count, then you stitch on the lower counts. If it's frustrating to stitch on a higher count, then you stitch on the lower counts because it's all about bringing joy to what you're doing on a
Yeah.
daily basis.
Yeah.
It's all about the joy.
It's not a
And
contest.
no, it is not. One of the things that I loved at the Bristol weekend that we were both at um, was we did a show and share, and one of the ladies stood up and she goes, I stitch on Ada and I love it.
Yeah.
And I
And her
was,
piece
good
were
for
stunning.
you. And her
Yeah.
pieces were stunning. They
Yeah.
were absolutely beautiful. A little tough to do this particular pattern on Ada because of the over one. Over one is not Ada's best friend. Um, but by golly, you can stitch on whatever count makes you happy. Whatever makes your hands happy, whatever makes your eyes happy, whatever makes your brain happy. because that's what it's all about. It's about
Yep.
enjoying the journey.
Yep.
You know, I had somebody, I had an opportunity one time to go and visit a shop called Undersea Fabrics. And they're not really, they don't specialize in the kind of fabrics that are best for me because I'm a sampler stitcher. But they specialize in fabrics for people that do mirabilias and things and
Oh
mermaids
yeah.
and things,
Yeah.
because their fabrics are bright and they're lovely, just gorgeous fabrics. But they're much brighter and they're multicolors, and you get pinks and blues and greens and things. And it was so funny when I walked in and was telling her what I like to stitch on. She goes, "Oh, you're a brown stitcher."
Yeah,
I
kind
said,
of.
yes. Yes, as a matter of
I
fact,
thought
I
of it
stitch
that
on
way.
shades of browns.
Yep. I'm a neutral stitcher.
I'm a neutral stitcher. I said, but that's what brings me joy. And the reason that I love samplers so much is that I love the fact that I am stitching something that some little girl either loved or didn't love doing, depending on
True.
what their ultimate goal was in life. But it was a part of them. And I love honoring that part of them by stitching what they stitched. And I think it's totally cool to then put your own initials on them and to change them up for yourself. But I love the fact that we're honoring what these little girls did, and astounded when you think about the fact that this was probably stitched by a 12-year-old age girl. I don't think it said how old she was. Oh, no, just what her birthday was, August 12th. So I don't know how old she was, but she was probably in the age range of a 12 or 13-year-old. And it's just an honor to get to do that. Could you imagine if that little girl came back and went, "Oh my gosh, look what people are doing. They loved
Yeah,
what I
that's pretty
did
amazing.
so much that they're willing to stitch what I stitched. They were willing to rechart it and do what that to me is just amazing. And that's the reason that I love samplers so much.
Well, you get to
Doing the
carry the
repeat.
past forward into the future.
Yes, exactly. Well, folks, it is 3 o'clock. I think we are out of time. I got a few stitches in. I did some reverse stitching. I did some forward stitching again. I've kind of covered all the bases there. Um, yes, I make mistakes. I make them more often than I care to admit. However, I make them less than I used to when I first started stitching. And but it's been a joy. And Cathe, thank you again
You're
for
welcome.
joining me and being willing to banter with me and let us use StreamYard. I think this is a great venue. It's a great way to do these because then they get to not, I'm not some disembodied voice on the video, which is what I've always been. It's just this disembodied voice. Nobody knew what I looked like. They just knew what my hand looked like, which isn't well manicured. So, folks, have a marvelous 4th of July. Stay cool, stay safe, travel safely. And I
And we'll
will,
let you know
yes,
when the August one is.
yes, that'll be later on. It will not be August 1st. That is my birthday. So it will not actually fall on the 1st, but it will be close to the beginning of the month. And we'll let you know when it'll be. So thank you again for joining us and have a
Thanks, everybody.
bye.
Okay, bye-bye.